did I report things?
No, we're just.
I can review it later. Like I reported.
Yeah, I thought the second assignment last
Really,
time,
like,
I don't remember what it was.
like,
Oh,
my
it
boss
had to do with reading from the file.
Committee? It's like, it's not because.
But I remember I came up with the second assignment, and I thought it was gonna be like that, and I was like, I'm
I
not
kind of want to make sure that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's right, so
Yeah.
if you can't like.
Same, I think I actually looked into it all the time too, for about, it was
No, I
the
definitely
thing,
told you, it's like.
complicated, where you have to
I know this.
calculate the cost.
No, that's-
And they.
They've been doing this a lot, and,
Yeah.
lawyers do a lot, and also.
And they had to get, like,
they do
the
a lot when
assignment
they-
right
Oh,
after
for
that,
feelers?
was like,
Someone
Yeah.
investigating someone that.
I'm just testing which one works best. And this one's really wide, as you can see. But you can see this one close.
And then assignment three was
Yeah.
like really.
But like if you were for any.
But you could,
user
because you have,
it's like,
like, one
you're
call.
writing down everything.
But you might not see the forms, you know, because it's so.
Because it's kind of long.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think.
You know, it's,
Much longer.
yeah, you can't do anything in court, but if you have some record,
Yeah.
I know for a fact.
Yeah, I
they told me
told
on
the
the
second
state
time
at
being
this
signed,
time.
like, I really thought that was
You know,
assignment one.
2 days later, the information report came out. I know for a fact
I'll
it's inside,
sorry.
you know, so.
It's crazy how they vary.
I think it's difficult. I think it's the chronology of events is also very important.
I mean, at this point, I just want to.
Yeah, so I found a solution for.
Like,
for
I
that
was the
assignment,
Southern
so
District
I
is
could have
not
that for reference
For.
for the final assignment.
Oh, for the.
That's on everything.
Yeah, I can send it to you if you want, just on GitHub.
Oh, nice, yes, please.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you. And, you know, it works. I had to change a few things just because of, I think wants to do with the 7 class members.
Okay, let's get started.
Yeah,
So, we were gonna, look at questions involving the pipeline. And so, we'll look at both, you know, questions that could be kind of typical questions for the pipeline and say, okay, well, factoring in forwarding, let's first of all, just so I can get the cycles correct. If here's our 5-stage pipeline, and then this is clock cycle 1, and by the way, this is just the way that I can keep track of which instruction is in which stage, without having to draw pretty pictures, because I can't draw pretty pictures. So let's just, so we've got a subtract, an add, a load, and I'm repeating an add, which makes it so it's a little bit tougher to follow. But so we have a fetch here for the subtract, and the subtract just keeps going along. And then after the subtract, there's an add, and it goes along. And then a load. And then the second add, I'll just depict that as add underscore 2. Okay, so let's say that I said that each register, so let's say that each register is X100 plus the register number. Okay, so that's the pattern. So register 7 would have 107, register 2 would have 102, and so on. So let's say that I asked, based on the pipeline, what are the inputs into the ALU on clock cycle number 4? Okay, so that's the, just make sure I've got it all set. Yeah, so that would be the first of the 2 adds. So the question would be, okay, what are my 2 inputs into the ALU? So stop and think about this. What would you think? What is the top input to the ALU going to be? Well, it's going to be the contents of register 2. Is register 2 getting modified at all? No. so it would be 102. Everybody good with me so far? Okay, now for register 7, it's getting modified. It's doing subtract what's in register 6 minus register 3. So 106 minus 103 is 3. So 3 is getting put into register 7. So this value for register 7 is going to be 3, not 7. Everybody good with that?
You calling out register 2, that's the number 2 in the add instruction? That's number 2? That's
Oh,
register 2 in terms of like register, read register.
It's not no, register 2 is the first, remember the first operand is the destination register.
Right. Mhm.
And so the first read register is register 2, the second read register
That's just
is register 7.
Right. In terms of positioning in the pipeline, is that 1 or 2? Not the number 2, but in terms of the register number. In the pipeline, is it read register 1 or read register 2?
Oh, okay, if I asked here, it would be 2 here
Right.
and 7 here.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay. And 7 would read the wrong value. I don't
Right,
have pictures doing the
When you said
forwarding,
register 2, I thought you meant. Yeah.
Read
register
yeah,
2. Okay.
yeah. No, I just meant number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah. So, okay, so everybody see that the inputs into the ALU for the top one, and actually I should show, let me show a figure that actually shows the pipelining. I mean the forwarding. So based on this, the top input into the ALU for clock, what did we say, clock cycle 4, would be 102, and this would be 3. Everybody good with that?
But that's only if we had something like forwarding in place, right? Because.
Yes, always assume forwarding is there.
Okay.
Yep. So, and in fact, an instruction like this, I will go and say, don't forget about forwarding. Now, the other question that I could ask is, tell me on which clock cycles this forwarding that takes place. And in fact, that's a pretty typical question. So, let me erase the circle here. So what stage is it that forwarding takes place in? It's always in the execute stage, right? So it's always going to be in the execute stage. So we just need to look at the instructions that are in the execute stage and see, are we doing forwarding or not? Well, for the subtract instruction, are we doing any forwarding for that? Well, no, it's actually the first instruction. We're not, we may forward its result, but when the subtract instruction is in the execute stage, it's using the 2 values from the registers because I haven't even specified what the instructions are before here. Okay, so the subtract instruction, if I'm just assuming that other non-related instructions are in the pipeline before the subtract instruction, unless those other instructions are writing to 6 and 3, then there's no forwarding going on for the subtract instruction. Okay. Now for the add instruction, is there forwarding going on for that? Yeah, we have to forward the value for register 7 because the instruction before us is doing forwarding. The instruction before us is writing to register 7, so we need to forward. Now for the load, it is reading register number 8, so are we doing any forwarding for that instruction? No, because register 8 isn't being modified. Then the second add instruction, that is reading register 13 and register 8. So are we doing forwarding for register 8?
Yes.
Well, I not for register 8. I know you started to answer. I was asking. You thought I was just asking more in general, and I didn't need to go and trip you up. But yes, we are doing forwarding for register 13 because here the add instruction that writes to register 13 is in the write back stage. And so that would be a case where I could also ask, well, where is the forwarding coming from? And so in this case, the forwarding is in the pipeline register between the mem and the write-back stage. So it would be coming from the mem write-back pipeline register because the first add is here. So the answer that we need, the value we need to get into the ALU is in the mem write-back pipeline register. So, so in that case, in the forwarding done here for register 13, the value that we're getting is, the correct value that we're getting is from the mem write-back pipeline register. What about for the forwarding that we saw here for register 7? Is that also coming from the mem write-back pipeline register or a different one? Yeah. I heard the correct answer. I just want to make sure everybody else comes to the same conclusion. Since I said it was the correct answer, then that might nudge you a bit. But for register 7, for this for this add instruction, it's getting the correct value from the subtract instruction that's right before it. So when that first add instruction is here, the subtract instruction is in the data memory step. So therefore, the correct value is in the EXMEM pipeline register. Everybody see that? Are we good with that? Okay. Other questions, or if you'd like me to insert a suggested question. Unless everybody's really comfortable with super pipelines, and since we had the question, I see a shake of the head. Not everybody is super comfortable with super pipelines. I just want to make sure that that first of all, and this is also kind of the perfect question associated with hazards to begin with. So if we have our standard 5-stage pipeline, then I just know I'm going to want this as soon as I shut it off. Let me not shut it off. Let me use over here. Okay, so if we look at the branch hazard, how many clock cycles do we waste or do we lose on, and I really should show it. Let me just put this down. How many clock cycles do we lose on a branch? What is our branch hazard penalty in our standard 5-stage pipeline once we do all the optimizations? So actually let me step forward to the figure that you're going to use. Okay, so this is kind of a more complex figure, but when we do forwarding, when we have our optimized data path, then how many clock cycles are we losing when our branch prediction is incorrect? For the 5-stage pipeline? One, because we optimized it so that we completed the branch here in the ID stage, because we have this comparator that compares the two registers, and so we complete it in the ID stage. So if we're completing it in the ID stage, we can only get one prediction wrong. So our penalty in our standard 5-stage pipeline is 1 cycle. Now, let me just make up a super pipeline example. Let's say that we have 4 IF stages. A single ID stage, a single EX stage, and let's say we have 5 MEM stages, So what we have now is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We could have a 12-stage pipeline based on what I've come up with here. If that's our 12-stage pipeline, so we'll have 12 instructions at various stages of inclusion, of execution. One in the stage, one in the stage, one in the stage, and so on. What would our branch hazard penalty be for the new super pipeline?
4.
Yeah, it's going to be 4, because the earliest we can possibly complete the branch is in the decode stage. So if we have all these additional IF stages, we might have fetched incorrectly 4 instructions. Okay, so in this case, it's gone from 1 cycle to 4. Don't memorize that number because I'm not necessarily going to give this exact example, but understand the concept is that, and by the way, I promise this, and I don't even need to write this down, even as bad as my memory is. I will not break up the ID, EX, and write back stages. The only stages, and the EX is the one where it would really get messy. The only stages I will break up is the IF and the MEP stages. Okay. So, everybody good with 4 on that particular example? Okay, now, for the 2 different types of data hazards, we have the forwarding type, where, something like what we have up there, the subtract followed by the add. That's a forwarding data hazard. In our standard 5-stage pipeline, what was our penalty for the forwarding data hazard?
0.
Yeah, it's actually 0 because we can go and we can always forward as long as it is an R-type instruction, as long as it's not a load. Okay? When we have a forwarding data hazard, we can always forward it with 0 cycles delay. Is that still the case in our super pipeline or not? Because we're running out of time, I'll answer the question. It is still the case because we only have 1 execute stage. If we broke up execute stages, then things would fall apart. But if we just look at what do we have? Add and then subtract, or subtract and then add. So if when our add instruction is going into the execute stage, yeah, we can still forward that value because as soon as the subtract instruction leaves the execute stage, the value for register number 7 is known. Okay? So that still is 0 cycles. Now, for the non-forwarding case, that's the case where we've got a load and the compiler can't find an instruction to put after the load that uses the result of the load. So based on that, what did we see our hazard penalty was for a load?
It's 4.
Well, for the original pipeline. Yeah, it's 1 because our problem that we saw was we had to insert a no-op between the load. If we had to say load register 9, and then if the very next instruction uses register 9, well, the fact is that we would have to insert a no-op so that by the time that the add instruction gets into the execute stage, then that way that we have to make it so that the load instruction gets to the write back stage, because while it's in the mem stage, it still is figuring out what value is going to be in register 9. Once it's in the write back stage, we can forward it. So it's got an inherent 1 cycle latency. So that's our basic non-forwarding penalty in our 5-stage pipeline. What would it be in this pipeline?
5.
Yeah. Everybody agree? Everybody see why that would be? Because our load can't forward while it's still in one of the mem stages, because it still doesn't know what the value is going to be until it's done with all of the mem stages and it's now in the write back stage, which means our hardware would have had to go and insert 5 different no-ops if the compiler couldn't hide it for us. What does it add? So it would have had to insert 5 no-ops between the load and the add. So that would have become a 5-cycle penalty. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, let me stop offering questions and then get back to you ordering me around. I just wanted to make sure I covered that because the question had come up before about data hazards, and this, I think, is a perfect way of evaluating whether you understand hazards properly. And so there will be a question like this. I'm not saying that that's the exact scenario, but there'll be a question like this. Count on it.
So non-forwarding is only with mem.
Non-forwarding is only with load instructions. With load
Would they
instructions,
then-
yes. Yeah. Other questions? Everybody comfortable with virtual memory?
Actually, I cannot think of any specific questions to ask about it, but maybe.
Okay, for virtual memory?
In converting virtual to physical.
Well, that was what I was going to suggest. If you're not comfortable going and making a virtual address to a physical address translation, you want to be comfortable. Hint, hint, Mr. Subtlety. So let's. One thing to keep in mind is that there is a different page table for every process. So I'm just going to go and draw one page table in the interest of time, but let's say this is our page table for process 6, okay? And we'll say that what is currently running now is process 6. But I could give you page tables for 2 different processes and say, make the translation if it's process 6 that's running, and then make the translation if it's process 4, if 4 is the page table I give. So we'll have so okay, so first of all, one question that I could ask is, give me a virtual address that would generate a page fault. Remember, what is a page fault? A page fault is when the page that we're looking for is not in main memory. It's out on the disk. Well, the page table, if it says valid, then that means it's somewhere in main memory. It's only when valid is 0 that says the page is not in main memory. So if I asked, just give me a virtual address. Oh, and by the way, I also promised you, people may not have totally jotted this down because Karen originally covered the virtual memory topic, but I mentioned afterwards. You can count on the fact any translation, any virtual address to physical address translation that I give you, you can count on the fact of a page table size of a page size of 4K, where 4K is 2 to the 12th. 4K is 2 to the 12th, so that means that if we look at an address page offset will be the 12 least significant bits, which is 3 hex digits, and the virtual page number will be the remaining bits. So this would be like 20 bits or 5 hex digits. And this has to be translated into, so this we have to translate. This just becomes the exact same. The page offset remains the same. So this virtual page has to be translated into the physical page where it is kept. Now, just as a reminder, I covered TLBs. The translation look-aside buffer is essentially a specialized cache for the page table because going to memory for the page table is too slow. So TLBs, it's important that you know that they're used to speed up the process. If we start out with a virtual address, and we always start out with a virtual address, we go to the TLB to see if it, to make that virtual page to physical page translation, because page tables are too slow. Having said that, we're now going to go and figure out some page table stuff. So, what would be a virtual address that would generate a page fault? Well, it would have to be this entry right here. And our page table is set up so that our page table is set up so that each entry is essentially our page number, our virtual page number here indexes into the page table. So this entry right here, is this for virtual page 0 or for virtual page 1?
0.
0. That's really important, otherwise you're going to get off by 1 errors. And again, that shouldn't be surprising because it's perfectly legal to have a 0 in these digits for the virtual page number. So you have to index from 0. So this is the entry for 0, this is the entry for 1, virtual page 2, virtual page 3, virtual page 4, virtual page 5, virtual page 6. So as a result, if I asked you, give me an address that will have a page fault, give me a virtual address for this particular process that will generate a page fault, well, just 6, and then these next 3 digits can be whatever you want, from 000 up to FFF, because that address will represents virtual page 6, and virtual page 6 is not in main memory based on the page table. Okay, having said that, let's take a different address. Let's take address, let's take virtual address 57AC. Okay, so if that is our virtual address, and this is the page table for the currently actively running process, then how are we going to translate that virtual address to the physical address? Well, again, the page offset bits stay the same. This is indicating right here that this virtual address is 7AC bytes away from where the page begins. If it's 7AC bytes away from where the virtual page begins, it's also 7AC bytes away from where the physical page begins. So that part stays the same, and you need to get the whole thing correct. What uses the page table is this virtual page. We have to translate that virtual page into whatever physical page it's located at. Okay, well, let's take a look. We're doing virtual page, was it 5? Okay, so this is 0. This is virtual page 0, virtual page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So virtual page 5 is held in physical page 7FF. So, as a result, this 5 is translated into 7FF. So the entire physical address for a virtual address of 57AC for process number 6 is 7FF 7AC. And you need to include all of it and in the correct order to get full credit. Yeah,
For the material that Karen covered, do you have like old class recordings for that?
okay, yeah, did that not get a video recording? Did we
No.
not? Okay, so, okay, I will need to look up, there may be some overlap in other topics, but, yeah, so let me, certainly for the virtual page, for the virtual address topic, virtual address recording. Okay, I'll come up with something on that.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Other questions? Holy smokes, we got 4 minutes left in the typical class time.
Do you think we'd have time to do anything about, caches that involve us having to actually go into the binary instead of just relying on X?
Yeah, okay, so caches involving the binary. So, for that, let's say that we have okay, so let's say that our block size is equal to 64, which is 2 to the 6th. That's actually the most typical block size. And let's say that the number of sets is equal to 2 to the 13th. So, based on that, then that means that our block offset is going to be how many bits?
6.
6. 6 bits, because this is 2 to the 6th. And our set number is going to be how many bits?
13.
13. Because that's 13.
And the
So
tag
this-
is going to be 11.
What's that?
Tag is going to be 11.
Um,
No, it's going to be 13.
Yeah, actually the tag is also going to be 13 because, this looks a little familiar. Why don't I just tweak this, although those who like nice neat notes, I may drive you a little bit nuts, but let's just change the number of sets to be 2 to the 11th. Okay, because I'm 13 and 13 just looks.
It's the final question.
What's that?
So it just-
No, it could be the other class that I teach, but it just looks familiar, and so let's make this 15. So I just want to make it so that we're doing enough unique examples so that if I did 13 and 13 before, I don't want to duplicate that. So if that's the case, let's say that we have a request for, okay, let's say 09F467C8. Okay, so if we do that, well, what's the binary? So 8 is 1000, C is 1100, 7 is 0111, 6 is 0110, 4 is 0100, F is 1111, 9 is 1001, and 00000. Let's just make sure we got that right. 0, 9, F, 4, 6, 7, C, 8. Okay, so that means our block offset, so
Is it 8?
so I could ask, what is the block offset? What is the set number? What is the tag? And I also could ask, what is the address where the block begins? And what is the address where the block ends? So the block offset, and this, I maybe chose my numbers a little unfortunately, but because these are 2 zeros, but this is going to be 8. So our block offset is equal to, well, hex 8, same thing as decimal 8. So our set number is going to be the next 11 bits. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, and once again, I've got just zeros on both sides. Great choice. Okay, but, well, it doesn't matter. the point still remains, so the 1, 1, 1, so you start here, and then you just start grouping bits by 4. 4 bits, that's an F. 1, 0, 0, 1, that's a 9, and then 0, 0, 1, that's a 1. So our set number is equal to 19F. And then our tag is, again, going from this boundary 4 at a time. 1, 0, 1, 0, that's an A. 1, 1, 1, 1, that's an F. 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, that's a 4. And then 0, 0, so that's a 0. So our tag is 4FA. And then if I asked, what address does the block begin? The block begins where the block offset. So can I erase this? Everybody get this? Okay. So the block begins where the block offset bits are all zeros. And then everything else is the same. So all zeros there, 0, 0, 0. 1, hold on, where is this? Is the one I'm finding. Okay, 1, 1, 0, 0, that's a C, and then everything else is the same. So the block begins at 19F467 C0, and it ends where these block offset bits are all 1s. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then these are the same. So 1, 1, 1, 1, that's F. 1, 1, 1, 1, that's F. And then this is 7, and all the others are the same. So this block ends at 9F467FF. Okay. And that's the kind of question I would ask on kind of the quote-unquote binary version of cache addresses and all that. Anything else I can do for you? Going once?
Oh,
Yeah.
can the exam be like the full time,
What?
2 hours and 45 minutes?
It all depends. If the rules say it's 2 hours, I've got to go with whatever the rules are.
The more time we have. For the midterm, we have the whole time.
I know. I've just got to look. If the school says it's 2 hours, then I've got to do whatever the school says.
Oh, you can change the rules because you're the one.
You know, they don't care about me. If they say it's 6 to 8, then that's what I have to adhere to. I will try to make it so it's not a time pressure exam, but trying to put a whole semester into a 2-hour exam.
I know.
I don't remember seeing that before, but I kind of.
I think that's just what I saw when I logged on student link with its final exam schedule.
Yeah.
I think it says the time was 6 to 8.
It's a benefit no matter what, because either we have 2 hours, 45 minutes, we have more time, or we only have 2 hours and then have to truncate the exam to fit within the 2 hours. So it's not going to be like a 3-hour exam in 2 hours. It's going to be the appropriate exam.
Yeah,
the appropriate length.
I will scale the exam back if it's only 2 hours.
Yeah,
I thought sure somebody was going to say, and if it's only 2 hours, it gives us more drinking time afterwards.
No.
But, so.
I just need
They're actually, I took the GMAT, and one of the things they changed about that is they made it less time and ask fewer questions because they realized that they could keep on doing it forever and ever, but it's like a 4-hour exam and people were just getting wiped out.
Yeah.
Now, they changed the time after I took it, so all of a sudden my 7 whatever is not as powerful as one was. But
Thank you.
I took the GMATs myself way back when I was doing a first level.